$90 for Hagman and Hagman listeners. By the way, you can compare this. By the way, to Linden Farms, which I believe their retail is at least $20 over that price. But Hagman and Hagman listeners will receive a $10 credit towards their next purchase. Should you buy this for $90, it comes out to $80 then. However, you've got to send an email. Let American Survival Wholesale know that you heard this on the Hagman and Hagman Report. It's exclusive to our listeners. That's the Linden 7-day emergency food pack with a 20-year shelf life. You can't beat it. 90 full servings, 9 different meals to choose from, 2,000 calories a day for 1 week for one person, all in a 3.7-gallon rugged and stackable, easy-to-store container. That's AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com. AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com.
Also, a special message from AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com. For those and all who have ordered their crossbows, there seems to be a delay, not on American Survival's end, but the manufacturer's shipping, and UPS is slowing things down. You should have your crossbows by next Friday, 1 week at the latest. They apologize for the inconvenience. It is not on their end, though, and they just wanted to pass that along. So anybody who got the crossbow special, they will be there within a week. Just got a little hung up with the weather and the logistics. So that from American Survival Wholesale. And keep an eye out for your crossbows.
Hi, folks. Doug Hagman here. You might know me as the co-host from the Hagman and Hagman Report, or as a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're like me, you're tired and confused over today's headlines. You just don't know where to turn for accurate, concise information about really what's going on, what's truly going on in today's society. If you don't know where to turn for accurate, well-researched, and properly vetted news, I've got a suggestion. In fact, it's a requirement. Bookmark Canada Free Press. That's CanadaFreePress.com on the internet. It's just not for Canada. It's for news across the world. Judy McLeod, founding editor, has put together a vast array of talented writers like Kelly O'Connell, Daniel Greenfield, Dr. Eilena Johnson-Powell, a lot of guest columnists, very talented writers. Folks, that's Canada Free Press at CanadaFreePress.com. Now mobile friendly. Follow on Facebook, because without America, there is no free world.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 2 of the Hagman and Hagman Report this Friday, December 6, 2013. Christmas is coming up so fast. Folks, go to our website at HomelandSecurityUS.com. You can find the promo for today's website, also the article that they were referencing in the first hour. The Box of Chocolates article is up on the front page. We are joined by a very special guest, Tom Horn and Steve Quayle. And the first hour was full of some fantastic and insightful information. I'm going to give it right back to Steve and let you guys continue where you left off.
Well, I think right now what's really important, and Tom, I want you to comment on this, because when we did our show on Petros Romanus, the one that you were referring to, I think, in February, you had talked about the Vatican astronomers. Did you not find it, in the little note I sent you, I thought it was so interesting, because when I went back to revisit the Mothman prophecies and the descriptions, it sounded identical to what the Vatican astronomers were telling you, who they're looking for, that, who they're looking for to be the coming one. And again, it's critical, I think, that people understand this. And look, let me make this clear. We are telling you what the top scientific minds from the Vatican, with people with enough degrees to make a thermometer jealous, very bright individuals, what they are looking for. Because this is critical, because when I was in the desert Southwest and the people I had on my investigation team who were walking the canyons and the arroyos and talking to Mac, God bless you, Mac, my research assistant, all those guys were coming up with new and immediate, when I say new, fresh, a year ago, instances of watching gates open, people seeing the equivalent of Sasquatch, skinwalkers. The gates are opening, and Tom, we talked about that. We got a lot of, let's just say this, they won't believe it until they see it, and when they do, they better pray they've got Depends on. But the point is, we've got a lot of those people. But would you address that because of the description of Mothman, obviously the lizard-like wings, the almost pterodactyl-like looking thing? The thing is that, isn't that what you were told? This is who they're expecting?
Yeah, I mean, and by the way, look at today's headlines. Alien discovery or disclosure is very near. Doesn't this sound like the last pages of that book, Exo Vaticana, that came out of the interviews that we did with Rome's top astronomers? This is what the United States government heard today. A House committee was told by planetary scientists that the likelihood of life on other planets is very high. And so you've got PhD, credentialed physicists and astronomers who are prominent in this scientific field for the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. They're not, they are looking for exoworlds and the conditions where any kind, even if it was just a bacteria, of life could exist. But we all know that the Holy Grail, the real search, is for extraterrestrial intelligence. Why? Because they know that they're there. And we would call them one thing, but they think they're advanced intelligence from another place, and they're trying to find where they come from. But again, this is all compartmentalized, right? SAPOC budgets. It goes up to a point where it's past congressional review, and then it gets past a certain person's top secret ability. And somewhere at the very highest level, I think there are those who think they know this serpentine extraterrestrial, what's coming and when it's going to be here. As you know, as you said, we've been talking a lot, really, the last year about this new pope. But what we haven't said much about is how, as a Jesuit, Pope Francis is linked to something connected to extraterrestrials and even Stargate concepts. And I say that because when we were investigating, and I talked with Doug Hagman this week, there's some projects we have coming up in 2014, and now that I know that Doug Hagman is a licensed PI, we're going to be using him too. Anyway, back to my thoughts. When we were doing the investigation, and we did hire a private investigator into Petrus Romanus and Exo Vaticana, during that period of time, something else came to light, and that is that the new pope actually has a historic relationship with the members of the VORG, the Vatican Observatory Research Group. We uncovered that as a young adult, he earned a master's degree in chemistry from the University of Buenos Aires. He had scientific ambitions prior to entering the Jesuit order, including studies in astrobiology, life on other planets. Secondly, when the current leader of the VORG, Jose Gabriel Funes, who you and I have talked about before, who's also from Argentina, when he entered the Jesuit order, one of his examiners was Bergoglio. So now we have a relationship between George Bergoglio, or Pope Francis, the current pope, and the Vatican astronomers. Thirdly, in a recent interview with the Catholic Press, Funes said that this first Jesuit pope is on his honeymoon right now, but he said he is soon going to turn his attention, guess what, to issues like astrobiology, exactly what we predicted in the final chapter of Exo Vaticana. Now, I don't want to set myself up as a prophet, because I'm not a prophet. We just do a lot of great research, and we have people around us who are very good at what they do that we can hire to do investigative work for us. But I would remind the listening audience that a year in advance, we predicted that Pope Benedict XVI would step down, be the first pope to do so in 600 years, and that he would cite health reasons for doing so. We even named the month, the exact month that he would do that, and he did. We were on the Hagman and Hagman show, this very show, something like 10 days. Wasn't it like February the 15th, Doug? Remind me what that date was.
It was actually the 14th of February.
June 23rd was the first one. 14th of February was right after the announcement.
14th of February, and Steve and I were on your show, and I said something to the effect that the resignation of Benedict was imminent, in my opinion. Something like 10 days later, anyway, the 28th, whatever it was. So 2 weeks later, he resigns, and my phone literally rang off the hook. I mean, even the people from Rome, the media in Rome, the Latin press, they wanted to know how in the world we knew that he was going to do that. I'm saying all of that to say that that was a prediction we made that was uncanny. It came true. But if you read the book Exo Vaticana, we made some other predictions, and we said that whoever the new pope would be, that he was going to focus at some point on astrobiology, and that all of this dogma that's been being written by these Catholic astronomers with regard to the alien being our brother, and then what's, of course, lately what they're saying is they're morally superior to us, and that from them might even come an intergalactic savior. Shows we've already done. You can go back and listen to them. I assume they're in the archives. But in that book, the last chapter, we deal with this fact that whoever the new pope would be, at some point he is going to focus the Roman Catholic Church, the hot topic, if you will, is going to be on astrobiology. And lo and behold, here is the head of the Vatican Observatory Research Group in the Catholic press saying that this new pope soon is going to turn his attention to astrobiology. And today we've got physicists standing in front of a committee and before the United States government saying that the likelihood of alien life is more than less. Now, having said all that, let me remind people that there was another famous Jesuit, a man by the name of Malachi Martin, that Steve Quayle and I also have talked a lot about. He was an insider of the insiders at the Vatican. He was a Jesuit. He worked for 3 popes. He was a formidable polyglot. He could speak 17 languages, some of which were ancient and extinct. He worked inside the Holy See transcribing the Dead Sea Scrolls for the Vatican. He was a personal friend of Augustine Bea, who was the famous Jesuit. He had access to some of the deepest secrets, including the final mysteries of Fatima, which he certainly implied were not released in 2000 when the Vatican said they were. But so he was not a Johnny-come-lately. He later, however, asked for leave of his priestly duty. He moves to New York. He writes all these books that he calls fiction based on fact. He becomes a New York Times best-selling author. But Malachi had 2 different things in his books that he wrote that were predominant. The first was he wrote, for instance, the book The Jesuits, the Society of Jesus and the Betrayal of the Roman Catholic Church. And in that book, he basically described exactly what is happening in the Pope Francis administration today. He hoped that it wouldn't happen. But he described a secret war that was going on between the Jesuit order under the Black Pope and the rest of the priesthood. And what he described is happening today. He said there was this secret war. They wanted to take control of the Roman Catholic Church and the Vatican in particular. He said that was because, of course, the Vatican's not like any other Christian denomination. It's very political. 90 ambassadors at any time are parked there at the Vatican. It has relationships, political and otherwise, with most of the nations of the world. And according to Malachi, the Jesuits wanted to seize control of that as a machine, and he said they wanted to use it to give assistance to the rise of the New World Order. But go read what he had to say and listen to the radio shows that he was doing just before he died. What did he say they wanted to do? He said it would be if they could, he said, the Jesuits would take over the Vatican, and he said they would use it as a machine for Marxism, for communism, for socialism, and furthermore, he said they wanted to work in tandem with the coming of the Antichrist for the implementation of the objectives of the New World Order. Well, Brother Malachi Martin must be rolling over in his grave today to see that exactly what he said was going to happen, that he feared would happen, has happened, and that you have the first Jesuit elected as Pope. And what is he doing? He intends to use his power in the Vatican as a vehicle of the Black Pope, evidently, because Pope Francis is out there now talking about literally the implementation of a global socialist, what I would call an antichrist system. Don't you agree?
Absolutely, and
Yep.
I'm astonished, that and Doug, I don't mean to talk over you. I just want to respond to something. These statements coming out of the Vatican now, and this is something that people have got to understand. This isn't an anti-Catholic bashing statement. And hey Tom, you're going to love this. I was accused of being a spy for the Jesuits. If there's, good night. I've been accused of being everything, but that's a first. When you speak the truth, it cuts in all directions. The Word of God is sharper than a two-edged sword. And I have a two-edged sword I posted on my website. I keep that in mind because what people have got to understand is that this is the fulfillment. Henry Gruver, probably one of the most amazing men of God in the world, one of the most truly anointed men I know, told the story, and I had him in an interview on one of the radio interviews I did a number of years ago. It's on YouTube someplace, of literally being carried away into the streets of Rome underneath the Vatican and encountering two giant fallen angels with lizard-like wings, and very reptilian-looking, and the Lord commanded him, meaning Henry Gruver, to enchain them, I guess would be the best way. And Henry said he watched as giant chains, and he said giant, the links were bigger, rounder than your leg, came down from heaven, wrapped up these individuals. Now, Henry is a humble, amazing, loving, wonderful man, people who are listening to us now. But it was interesting, Tom, he was carried away in the spirit to the streets of Rome, and after that happened, he had people, different places in the world, that were called to pray for him, to uplift him in prayer at that very moment. Now, notice where I said it was. It was under the streets of Rome in the vicinity of Vatican. So when you think that Malachi Martin, by the way, the minute that Malachi Martin died, I said he was assassinated. There are people who say, well, you think everybody's assassinated. My statement is, when you're that prominent and you say the things that he says, he was assassinated. So now we've got, if you will, the very things you warned about in Petrus Romanus. And, I remember, his name wasn't Peter the Roman. You are dealing totally now with the beast, the system of the beast. And the beast has to have its false prophet. And the alien Savior, even in the book of Daniel, it talks about an alien God. We've talked about that at length, Tom, but let's talk tonight, too, about the portals opening, because we've got, an hour and 45 minutes left. Let's talk about the reports you're getting, the reports I'm getting, and it was you, Tom Horn, who basically brought the Scripture to a reality and a revelation to my life when you said the gates of hell would not prevail against it. When Jesus said, upon this rock, the faith, I'm going to build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. Yet, since that revelation, everything now has geared up, keyed up. And it's fascinating to me that when you're dealing with CERN, the Hadron Collider, when you're dealing with all types of relative and you're dealing with what I call esoteric physics, it's always related to Siva the Destroyer. It's always related to end times. It's always related to entities coming through the portals. And we've got literal, and you've seen them too, I'm sure, on the internet, eyewitness testimonies from the Baja, Mexico, and mainland Mexico of people actually seeing falling stars that fall straight down and turning into wing-like creatures before they disappear. Now, what's your concern at this moment, Tom, that what we've warned about, it's one thing to warn about it and, say in the future it's going to happen. It's another when it's one of those, I can't say that, oh my goodness moments, when there are not hundreds but thousands of people seeing, in essence, falling stars, and the word star is obviously a messenger, that's what it means, but all these falling messengers straight down, I'm not talking about any type of angular velocity, angular momentum, asteroids or comets, I'm talking about falling stars, and people literally seeing with their own eyes, they're not drunk, and they're not smoking dope, and they're not popping, drugs, and the people are seeing it in mass now. What does that say to you about the timing that you and I have written about, warned about, as it relates to even the entire Vatican announcement? Get ready, these are my words, the intergalactic Savior is coming.
Well, I'll respond to that. But first of all, you're a secret Jesuit? Me too. I didn't know that until I discovered it on internet gossip. So who knew? We're Jesuit brothers, I guess. Look, well,
Yeah.
it goes to the other thing. I said that Malachi Martin had talked about two things. Well, one, he warned about that Jesuit situation developing, and go read his book. Go read the Jesuit Society, the Society of Jesus and the Betrayal of the Roman Catholic Church, and you would think that here was a guy who described what's happening in Rome right now and then wrote a book about it, except that he wrote this a couple of decades ago. But the second thing that Malachi Martin is famous for having talked about was what those same Jesuits were doing on top of that mountain there in Arizona. How many listeners are aware that an hour away from Tucson, there's an advanced telescope and an observatory group that literally forced their way onto the top of Mount Graham? And that whole observatory up there, they're part of the consortium that uses it, but they themselves own, of course, their own advanced telescope up there. And most people probably know in the 90s when Art Bell was interviewing Malachi Martin, he asked him on Coast to Coast AM, why was the Vatican up there on the top of that mountain? And Art Bell's, Malachi Martin's answer ignited kind of a firestorm in that he said that at the highest levels of the Roman governance and geopolitics, he said they are up there because they know what is approaching the earth and that it is going to be of the utmost importance in the coming years. Well, he also put a time frame of about 10 years on that. And guess what? Almost to the date, a decade later, in 2009, what happens? But the Vatican abruptly calls for an astrobiology study week. Of all things, they have the Pontifical Academy of Scientists, the scientists for the Vatican. They bring together 30 of the most powerful astronomers in the world, geologists, theoretical physicists. They also brought in theologians because the whole study week, the purpose of the study week was to ask, what would be the impact on faith given the disclosure or the discovery of advanced extraterrestrial intelligence, some intelligence somewhere beyond the earth, almost to the date that Malachi had given that time frame. 90 days after that, the Royal Society, now we're talking about the oldest scientific body in the world, they convene a meeting in Britain in January, 90 days later, and the whole purpose of their discussion was to talk about the detection of extraterrestrial life and the consequences for science and society. Well, the media was in a frenzy. You and I did a radio show. As a matter of fact, we did 20 hours of interviews. We interviewed you. We interviewed Nick Pope, the former head of Britain's military of defense department that did reports on UFO activity. We got one of Jesse Marcel Jr.'s last recordings. People may not know that, but he died a couple of months ago. We got one of his last recordings, and we've been giving that away with the whole 20-hour series and a ton of other stuff. We're giving that all away when people buy Exo Vaticana because we want them to have this information. So we held our own Pontifical Academy of Sciences, if you will. But anyway, after the meeting, because Rome had a couple of its astronomers at the science meeting, the media wanted to know what's going on, why is the Vatican part of it, why is the Vatican having a meeting 90 days later, the Royal Scientific Body is gathering together, are we on the verge of some kind of a disclosure? And frankly, between me and you, after talking to the astronomers up there on the top of that mountain and coming back down and getting interviews with top astronomers from Rome, I have a feeling that something was about to happen, and then it didn't. And now it's a bigger question as to why they put the brakes on, and what is it that they are waiting for? Are they taking advice from some other unknown? Is it that the government was afraid of how the religious communities might react, that it might paralyze the global economies? I mean, really, what was happening? But there's a great deal of reason to believe that they think they know something. Putnam would tell you this, we totally picked that up from the astronomers up there on the top of Mount Graham. Well, in any case, the media wanted to know, The Vatican sent out Jose Gabriel Funes and a couple of others. They're out there, and they're saying, well, it's just in case. We've made mistakes in the past, and persecuting scientists and things like that, and we don't want to do that again. But they started saying some important things. First of all, they started saying the extraterrestrial is our brother. Then they went a little bit further, and Jose Funes went on record and he said, to not believe in extraterrestrial intelligence would be the real heresy because it would put limits on God's creative ability. Then he wrote his breakout article, The Extraterrestrial is My Brother. And he talked about how he wanted to baptize aliens into the Catholic faith. And then Steve, Doug, and Joe, he said, I don't know if this was a slip of the lip or if it was just one of those things that most of the people heard him say and then didn't quite put it together the same way I did. But what he said was that the disclosure of advanced intelligence, extraterrestrial intelligence, he said, will not challenge the Catholic Church's authority. I'm not saying it exactly the way he said it, but that's what he said. And immediately what popped into my head was, how in the world could you know that? How could you know? Unless you've made some kind of a Mephistophelian bargain, some Faustian deal with some power that you think is extraterrestrial, how could you say it will not challenge the authority of the Roman Catholic Church? Well, it was a mysterious statement, but I thought maybe it was because Funes knew something a little bit about what another priest was saying at the same time, and that was before he died, Monsignor Corrado Balducci. Remember him? And he was the official spokesperson for the Vatican on the subject of UFOs and aliens, the official one. He was an exorcist. He was a theologian. He was a personal friend of the Pope. He died a few years ago under mysterious circumstances, a la Malachi Martin, right? All of a sudden something weird happens, and he's dead. Because just before Corrado Balducci died, he was out there on Italian television. He partook in a documentary that was made here in the United States that you can watch on YouTube. And guess what he was saying? He was saying, first of all, the aliens exist. Secondly, he said they're here now. Some of them are. And thirdly, as an exorcist for the church, he said they're not angels, they're not demons, they're advanced humanoid-like individuals. Fourthly, he said they are morally superior to us. Now that certainly echoes what many of the other Catholic theologians are saying right now, in which they're suggesting that they're not fallen, we are fallen, therefore they're closer to God than we are. Therefore they have a better understanding of the gospel and of the nature of God and whatever than what we have, right? So they've gone from, I'd like to baptize an alien into the Catholic faith, to they're morally superior to us. And now, though, what they're saying is they're coming, and they're going to baptize us into their faith, and it's going to require us to make changes to our knowledge, to our understanding of the gospel. In fact, some of their deepest theologians, we quote them and we source. In fact, when I was speaking at the Strategic Perspectives Conference recently, Chuck Missler said to the whole crowd, he said, this is the most well-resourced, most well-sourced work ever done on this subject. That's partly due to Chris Putnam, because Putnam, he's not only a great investigator, man, he is really picky about not saying something if you can't back it up with legitimate facts. Well, we did do that, and guess what? We backed up with legitimate facts that their deepest theologians are saying perhaps everything we think we know about the gospel is going to have to be thrown out. We're talking about Opus Dei level theologians that teach at the Pope's University in Rome who are writing theses right now that will go through a review process and become an official doctrine for the church. What's the push, right? I'm telling you, they're behaving in a way as if they either know or they think they know something that the rest of us do not. And therefore, whenever I see these committee hearings in the United States government like today, saying that we're closer than ever and it's more likely than not that we're about to make extraterrestrial contact, I think there is a level at which there is knowledge that is connected to, get to the bottom line real quickly, I think it's connected to great deception. And these Jesuits who are becoming increasingly outspoken regarding the reality of an alien agenda, I think maybe some of them know it, probably most of them are unknowingly connecting themselves to an end-time scenario that the Bible talks about too, right? His coming will be marked by fearful sights and great signs from heaven. He will appear with lying signs and wonders, the Antichrist will, 2 Thessalonians says. Daniel, he will honor the God of forces, an alien God whom his fathers did not know. I think they unknowingly have connected themselves to end times prophecy. Well, anyway, to get on to maybe the subject then of these portals, what is it that's coming through? When we were up there on the top of Mount Graham, I mean, we made so many notes that day. We met with the Vatican's Jesuit astronomer. We was astonished at stuff that he told us, and by the way, we have him on film, and we may make that film public knowledge at some point. And he told us some astonishing things. One, that the Vatican only uses their telescope now to monitor exo-worlds on which they think there is intelligence. And secondly, that UFOs are so common that it's almost like swatting at flies. Masses of them. And he wasn't the only astronomer who told us that. When we went to the radio telescope next door, nobody was there, so we ran up the hill to the large binocular telescope where the Lucifer device was, and that building was packed with people. It was buzzing with astronomers from all over the place, and we were literally taken back with the ease at which, as we were sitting inside the control room and the astronomers were in there, and the tech guy they gave us, who spent hours with us that day, they're pointing at those screens talking about how often they see not just a single UFO. They'll sometimes see what appear to be armadas. And I'm looking at Chris and I'm looking at Joe, the wild man there, who went as our cameraman, and we're looking at each other like, really? I mean, these guys are just this open about this knowledge, but they were. And but it was when we came down off the mountain, and that, brother, that's when the real knowledge started hitting us. We knew that the indigenous people, the Apaches especially, the Indian